The other item we want to look at in the test options area in Blackboard, after we've decided that we're going to set a timer for 1 hour on this test and not use the forced completion option, is in the area of test feedback and in test presentation. So let's talk about test feedback for a moment. Right now, this test is set to provide only the feedback to the student as far as their score. If you don't want any student to see the results of their tests until all students have had a chance to complete the test, you can absolutely set a test so that no feedback is provided to the students after they submit their test for scoring. They won't know whether they got the correct answers, how many they got correct, which ones were correct, or any aspect of it at the point that they submit it. Now, that has a tendency to cause a lot of students to send you a lot of emails really fast. Like, I submitted my score, but didn't get anything, don't know what's going on. So we usually recommend, and that's why it's set by default within the TeleCampus, to at least give them the score. It doesn't tell them which ones they got right, which ones they got wrong. It doesn't tell them even which answers they submitted. It simply tells them what the score on the test was. So they get that immediate feedback. At the same time, providing feedback to students in terms of which answers they did get right and wrong, and feedback if you've loaded feedback for your questions to give them some guidance on maybe why they got it wrong. That's a good thing. That's a very positive aspect of formative assessment, to give them more than just their score on the test. What we recommend that faculty members do is set their test this way. Set the test to give the score. So they give the students the immediate feedback. They'll know whether or not they can celebrate or whether they need to redouble their efforts in studying the material, depending on whether they had a passing or a failing score on the test. And then after all of the students in the class have completed that test, you give them a week or you give them a day, however much time you want to give them to complete that test, then you can come back into this test and change it to show them the submitted answers and the correct answers at that point. Then they can go back and review and have the benefit of that additional feedback you've just provided them. But they haven't been able to know exactly which were the correct answers on that test and perhaps share them with other members of the class. The second area to look at, and this is it's getting into a little subjective kind of work here, is in test presentation. We get asked questions a lot on, should we present questions all at once, or should we present them one at a time? Here's our general recommendation. If you're presenting questions one at a time, the advantage is that if the student drops their internet connection, if something happens with their computer in the middle of a 50-item test, they won't lose their work. The computer will have remembered each of their answers that was submitted up to the point that they lost that connection. If you present 50 items all at once on the screen, they may get down to item 49, having filled in all of those answers before and perhaps correctly. And if they lose their internet connection at that point, all of that work will have been lost. It will not be saved by the computer at all. So what we generally recommend is this. If it's a short test, if you're just giving 5 or 10 items, go ahead and give it all at once on the screen. They can see it all at once. The likelihood of them losing their internet connection on a very short test is smaller, and even if they do, it's not as much work to redo. If you're given 25 items or 50 items, then you ought to be presenting the questions one at a time, because then if they do lose their internet connection or their machine messes up for some reason or Blackboard messes up for some reason, they'll at least have preserved their work up to that point. And in fact, when they go back in, if they still have time left on the timer that you've given them, they'll be actually able to resume the test exactly where they left off when they dropped their internet connection or when their computer messed up, if you have it set for one at a time. So that if it has 12 items or 15, you're starting to get into the subjective area. There's no hard and fast rule of 10 items or 20 items or 30 items as far as this all at once or one at a time presentation. If you're worried about presenting a short test all at once that students can very easily copy the entire test, the TeleCampus is released on SourceForge, and we'll be able to provide it to your course developers on campus, some code that actually prevents students from being able to print or copy and paste or email any of your tests out to other students. Be warned, They could still use their cell phone cameras to take a picture of the screen and email that, so there's no completely safe way. But if you are worried, we are able to help you a little bit on that. The additional advantage of using a one-at-a-time presentation is they could still take a cell phone picture of each question on the screen, but if you've got 50 items and you randomize the questions for each test attempt, and we recommend doing that, and we're going to do one at a time too. If you randomize those test items and you present them one at a time, they're going to have to take a lot of photos, and even then it's not going to necessarily be the same questions in the same order. And you can go a long ways to reducing any concerns you might have as far as academic integrity in these courses.